Jasper was just 20 when the world he knew began to unravel. In a quiet, rain-soaked town where tradition spoke louder than love, he made a choice braver than most adults ever could. He told the truth about who he was. It was a calm evening. The scent of dinner still hung in the air as Jasper sat across from his parents. His hands trembled beneath the table, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, Mom, there's something I need to tell you." His father, James, looked up mid-bite. His mother, Linda, kept her eyes on her plate, as if she already knew what was coming. "I'm different," Jasper said quietly. "I'm gay." The words were simple, but they landed like thunder. James froze, his fork suspended in the air. Linda's hands tightened around her napkin. For a few unbearable seconds, silence filled the room. Then James's voice broke it, sharp, furious, echoing through the walls. "You've embarrassed this family," he shouted. "Do you know what people will say?" Jasper's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," he said softly. "I just want to be honest." But James's anger only grew. "That's not honesty," he said bitterly. "You've shamed us. Get out!" Jasper turned to his mother, silently begging for a sign of understanding. But Linda wouldn't look at him. Her voice was cold, distant. "Maybe it's best if you go," she whispered. "Your father needs time." "Time?" James barked. "He's not coming back." He grabbed an old backpack from the closet and tossed it across the room. The sound it made hitting the floor felt final, like a door slamming shut forever. "Take your things," James growled. "And don't come back." Jasper stood up, legs shaking. His heart pounded as he looked around the home he'd always known. Then, without another word, he stepped outside into the storm. Rain poured down, soaking him instantly. But the cold didn't matter. It was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. He walked aimlessly through the dark streets. Puddles glimmering under flickering streetlights, reflections of a life that had just shattered. The rain mixed with his tears as he wandered, unsure where to go or who would take him in. After what felt like hours, he stopped in front of an old boarded-up building. Desperate for shelter, he tried the door. The door barely moved before a rough voice echoed from inside. "Go away! Please!" Jasper called out, his voice breaking. "Just for the night. I have nowhere else. I said leave," the man barked. The door slammed shut, its echo swallowed by the storm. Jasper stood motionless in the rain, his body trembling, not just from the cold, but from the weight of rejection. Eventually, he wandered to the town's small park. Too exhausted to walk any farther, he curled up on a damp bench, pulling his thin Jasperette tightly around him. The wind cut through him like glass. His thoughts spun with confusion and disbelief. Was this really what honesty cost? How could telling the truth about himself lead to being left in the dark like this? But what Jasper didn't know was that this night, this heartbreak, wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning, a journey that would test him, shape him, and eventually bring him back stronger than anyone could have imagined. This isn't just a story of rejection. It's a story of resilience, of courage, of learning to live as you truly are, even when the world turns away. He didn't yet understand why his family's love had vanished so easily, or why the world could feel so cold. As he drifted into a restless sleep, a sudden burst of laughter cut through the rain. Jasper's eyes snapped open. A group of teenagers was walking toward him. Their faces were hidden in shadow, their voices sharp. "Well, look who it is," one said mockingly. "Lost in the rain, huh?" Jasper sat up quickly. "I don't want any trouble," he stammered. "Trouble?" another boy said with a smirk. "No one's looking for trouble here." They circled closer, taunting him, not with blows but with words meant to sting. Jasper's heart pounded. His chest tightened. He could feel the fear rising inside him. Then something inside him shifted. He refused to break. In one quick motion, he grabbed his bag and ran, his shoes splashing through puddles, his breath ragged in the cold night air. The sound of voices behind him pushed him forward. He turned down a narrow alley and ducked behind a dumpster, pressing his back to the cold metal. The voices faded. The laughter drifted away. Only the rain remained, Jasper collapsed to the ground, trembling. His clothes were soaked. His body ached from fear and exhaustion. He crawled under a tree for shelter. The leaves above did little to block the rain. As the cold crept into his bones, he thought of home, of his father's anger, his mother's silence, and for the first time, he understood what it meant to be truly alone. "I'll prove them wrong," he whispered to himself, his voice small but certain. "I'll survive. I'll be more than this." What he didn't know was that everything was about to change. The rain hadn't stopped when Jasper opened his eyes the next morning. His body ached with cold. His damp clothes clung like a reminder of the night before. The sky was gray. The park was silent. For a fleeting moment, Jasper wished it was all just a bad dream, that he could open his eyes, be back in his room, and pretend none of it had happened. But the ache in his body and the emptiness in his stomach told a different story. He had nowhere to go, but he couldn't stay there either. With heavy steps, Jasper began walking through the rain-soaked streets toward an uncertain future. Then he saw it, a small convenience store, its flickering open sign barely glowing through the storm. Swallowing his nerves, he pushed open the door. A small bell chimed overhead. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 40s. His tired eyes scanned Jasper from head to toe. "What do you need?" the man asked, his voice flat. Jasper hesitated. "Just somewhere dry to stay. Just for a little while?" "This isn't a shelter, kid," the man said, already turning away. "I can help," Jasper offered quickly. "Clean, stack shelves, anything, please." The man pointed toward the door, his tone firm. "Go home, son, before someone decides to call the police." Jasper's shoulders slumped. He stepped back out into the rain. It felt colder now, sharper, as if the whole world was trying to wash him away. He kept walking, block after block, until the town lights dimmed behind him. In the distance, he spotted an old abandoned factory. It looked empty and forgotten, but it had a roof. As he stepped closer, a low voice came from the shadows. "Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" A man emerged, older, rugged, with a weathered face and cautious eyes. "I just need a place to stay," Jasper said softly. "I won't cause trouble." "This place isn't for you," the man replied, stepping closer. "You should move along before it becomes an issue." Jasper wanted to explain, to beg for understanding, but the man's tone told him it wouldn't matter. So he turned and walked away again. Each step cracked a little more of his hope, like glass under pressure. By the time night returned, Jasper found himself back at the same park bench. This time he sat beneath a street lamp, hoping the light might keep the darkness away. But it didn't. "Well, look who's back," a familiar voice called out. Jasper froze. His heart sank. It was the same group from the night before, faces half lit, half shadowed. "Didn't we tell you to disappear?" one sneered. "This town doesn't need people like you." Jasper's hands shook. "I don't want trouble," he said quietly. But trouble had already found him. Lost again? Another voice mocked. Before Jasper could respond, someone shoved him roughly by the shoulder. He stumbled, barely keeping his balance. "I'm not looking for trouble," he repeated, his voice cracking. He tried to step back, but they blocked his path. The circle closed in. One of them yanked the strap of his backpack, pulling it from his shoulder. "What's this?" the boy taunted, rummaging through Jasper's things. "Running away from home?" "Give it back!" Jasper shouted, stepping forward. Another boy moved fast, shoving him backward. Jasper hit the ground, his palms scraping against the wet pavement. For a moment, he just stayed there, breathing hard, shaking, the world spinning around him. And in that rain-drenched silence, he made himself a promise. No matter what they took from him tonight, they wouldn't take his courage. Cold laughter faded into the night as flashing lights painted the street in blue and red. The group scattered instantly, leaving Jasper alone on the ground. A car door opened and firm footsteps approached. "You okay, kid?" a calm voice asked. Jasper looked up to see a police officer offering his hand. He hesitated, then took it. "Yeah, I'm fine," he whispered. though his voice trembled. The officer studied him for a moment. "It's not safe out here." "You got somewhere to stay?" Jasper looked down. "I'll manage," he said softly. The officer didn't push. He nodded and walked back to his car. As the cruiser drove away, the sound of rain filled the silence again. Jasper sat on the bench, clutching his torn backpack. "Why does it always end like this?" he whispered. But even in that moment of loneliness, something small and strong lit up inside him. Hope. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds. Jasper stirred awake, his body stiff from the cold night. Around him, people hurried to work, holding coffee cups, scrolling their phones, pretending not to see him. He slung his old backpack over his shoulder and walked until the smell of fresh bread stopped him in his tracks. It came from a small bakery on the corner, warm light glowing through the window. The door opened, and a kind-looking woman stepped out holding a tray of pastries. She paused when she saw him. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Jasper looked away. "I'm fine," he mumbled. She tilted her head. "You look like you could use something warm. Come in for a minute." He hesitated, then followed her inside. The air smelled of sugar and coffee. It felt safe. "Sit down," she said, placing a plate of bread and a mug of cocoa in front of him. "Eat first. We'll talk later." Jasper took a careful bite, his eyes watering at the taste of something so simple, yet so kind. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'm Lily," she said with a soft smile. "You don't have to explain anything. Just know there's a small room upstairs if you ever need a place to rest. No questions asked." Jasper stared at her, speechless. "Why would you do that?" Lily's smile faded slightly. "Because once someone gave up on a boy I cared about. I promised I'd never let that happen again." For the first time in days, Jasper didn't feel invisible. Over the next week, he helped around the bakery, sweeping floors, stacking trays, learning to bake bread. Lily never asked about his past. She just gave him structure, warmth, and trust, the kind of things he hadn't felt in a long time. But in small towns, word travels fast. One morning, the door slammed open. A man stormed in, his voice sharp. "Lily, you're really letting that kid work here? People are talking. They say it's not safe." Lily stayed calm. "He's helping. And he's staying. If people don't like it, they can find another bakery," the man scoffed. "You'll regret this," he muttered before leaving. Jasper looked down. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Lily placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't say that. You're not the problem, Jasper. Fear is," he nodded slowly. Gratitude filled his chest. For the first time in a long while, he believed maybe, just maybe, there was still a place in the world for him. Charlotte stood by Jasper through everything. Her support never wavered, even when the town's whispers grew louder. Every time Jasper stepped outside, he felt it. The stares, the silence, the quiet judgment that followed him everywhere. One evening, as he took the trash to the curb, a group of teenagers stepped out from the shadows. "Well, look who's playing house now," one of them sneered. "Think baking cookies makes you fit in?" Jasper kept his eyes down. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said softly. They moved in closer, blocking his path. "Too bad," another muttered, shoving him. Jasper stumbled but didn't fall. Before anything else could happen, Charlotte's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "That's enough!" she shouted, stepping out of the bakery. "Walk away now, or I'm calling the police." The teens hesitated, then scattered, but one called back over his shoulder, "This isn't over." That night, Jasper lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The fear pressed on his chest like a weight. "I don't know how much more I can take," he whispered. Charlotte paused outside his door. Then she stepped in and sat beside him. "You're stronger than you think," she said softly. "Please, don't give up." Jasper looked up at her, eyes wet. "Why do you believe in me?" Her answer was calm but fierce. "Because I've seen what happens when the world breaks someone, and I won't let that happen to you." For the first time in weeks, Jasper felt something stir inside him. Hope. Maybe things could change. Maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. Weeks passed. Jasper began to find peace in the rhythm of bakery life, measuring flour, kneading dough, the warm scent of cinnamon and sugar filling the air. Inside those walls, life felt steady again. Outside, though, the town hadn't changed. Whispers still followed him. Eyes still lingered. Yet within the warmth of Charlotte's kitchen, he found a quiet kind of safety. One rainy afternoon while cleaning the storage room, Jasper noticed a dusty wooden box tucked beneath an old shelf. Its brass hinges groaned as he opened it. Inside was a stack of aged letters tied with a faded ribbon. Curious, he untied them and began to read. The words were filled with longing, letters from a man named Daniel to someone he called R. Jasper. Froze. R wasn't just anyone. It was his father. His hands trembled. The man who had pushed him away had once written letters like these, letters full of care, fear, and truth. The realization cut deep. Had his father spent a lifetime hiding who he truly was? Was the anger Jasper faced just the echo of fear his father never faced himself? That evening, Jasper brought the letters to Charlotte. "I found these in the back room," he said quietly. Charlotte took them gently, her eyes soft with old memories. "They belonged to Daniel," she said. "He was like family to me. He and your father, they cared deeply for each other once." Jasper's voice shook. "Did my dad love him?" Charlotte nodded slowly. "He did, but fear is cruel. James chose what others expected over what his heart wanted. Daniel moved away. I heard he never recovered." Jasper fell silent. The pain in those letters echoed through him, and now, for the first time, he understood it. Across town, Jasper's mother, Isabella, sat alone in her quiet house, haunted by memories she'd tried to bury. Since Jasper had left, guilt lingered like a shadow. One night, while sorting through an old box of keepsakes, she found an envelope addressed to her E.G. written decades ago by her older brother, Michael. She unfolded the letter with shaking hands. It read, "I never blamed you for staying quiet, but silence can hurt more than words. I hope someday you'll understand what it feels like to be forgotten by your own family." Tears filled her eyes. She had stayed silent when her brother was pushed away. She had stayed silent again when her own son needed her most. Now, her silence felt heavier than ever. Back at the bakery, as Jasper began to heal and find his strength again, a new shadow appeared on the horizon, a challenge that would test everything he'd learned about forgiveness, courage, and family. Charlotte found an envelope slipped under the front door. Inside, a single message typed in cold, bold letters. "Stop helping that boy. You'll regret it." She handed it to Jasper. Her face was calm, but her voice carried steel. "They're getting bold," she said. "But I've dealt with fear before. We're not backing down." Jasper tried to stay calm, but unease tightened in his chest. And then it happened. When they returned to the bakery one night, the windows were shattered. Across the walls, red paint screamed hateful words. Jasper froze. His heart sank. "This is my fault," he whispered. "I brought this on you." Charlotte put a firm hand on his shoulder. "No," she said fiercely. "This isn't on you. This is what fear looks like when it feels threatened. But we don't run. Not from this." The next morning, she called a repairman. She didn't close the shop. She didn't hide. "Let them see we're still standing," she said. "That's how you take your power back. If we back down now, they win." Her resolve never wavered. Even when Jasper's guilt grew heavy, then, the face behind the threats finally revealed itself. During a town hall meeting about community values, Jasper saw him. One of the boys from years ago, now older, polished, sitting on the town council, speaking about what was right and moral. Jasper stood at the back of the room, his hands shaking. He wanted to stay silent, but something inside him wouldn't let him. "You talk about morals," Jasper said, his voice trembling. "But where's the morality in turning your back on someone just for being themselves?" The room went quiet. Every word seemed to hang in the air like dust, forcing people to look inward, to question the story they'd been told. That night, Jasper sat alone in the dark, thinking about everything. The letters, the threats, the silence. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about ending a cycle of fear that had followed his family for generations. He didn't know how the story would end, but one thing was certain. He wasn't alone anymore. Still, the threats continued. More notes appeared at the door, filled with bitterness and warning. Then one night, a stone shattered the bakery window. Taped to it was another message. Leave town. Jasper's hands shook as he picked it up. Charlotte was already sweeping up the glass, her face steady and calm. We can't keep doing this, Jasper whispered. I'm putting you in danger. Charlotte stopped, resting the broom beside her. Listen to me, kid, she said. People who act out of fear try to control others with it. The moment we hide, they've won. I'm not letting them chase me out, and neither should you. Jasper wanted to believe her, but the weight of everything pressed harder than ever. One afternoon, while cleaning tables, the bakery bell chimed. Jasper looked up and froze. Mason Thompson, local businessman, council member. Charming smile, cold eyes. He walked in like he owned the room. Heard you've been causing quite a stir, Mason said, his tone smooth, his smile too sharp. Charlotte stepped out from the kitchen, her voice cool and firm. What do you want, Mason? Just to talk, he said lightly. This town values its traditions. Helping this boy, it's making waves. You might want to think about what that means for your reputation and your business. Charlotte crossed her arms. Is that a threat? Just a fact, he said with a faint smile. You've built something good here. Don't throw it away, Jasper's anger flared. Why do you care so much? He demanded. Why are you so afraid of me? For a moment, something flickered in Mason's eyes. Not anger, but something like regret. Then it was gone. You wouldn't understand, he muttered, turning to leave. That night, Jasper found Charlotte sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands. You don't have to fight this for me, he said softly. It's not your job to protect me. Charlotte looked up, eyes full of quiet strength and something older, sorrow. You remind me of someone I once loved, she said gently. Her words lingered in the air. In that moment, Jasper understood. This wasn't just her fight or his. It was a story much bigger than both of them. A story about truth, about courage, and about finding light even when the world tries to dim it. Daniel, she said quietly. He was brave, but the world didn't know how to treat him right. No one stood beside him, and I'll never forgive myself for staying silent. I won't make that mistake again. Jasper couldn't find the words. He just nodded, throat tight. A few days later, Jasper arrived to find one harsh word sprayed across the bakery door. His stomach twisted. Charlotte showed up moments later, face set in determination. That's enough, she said, pulling out her phone. We're reporting this. What if it only makes things worse? Jasper asked. Maybe, she said. But silence never fixes anything. The police came, but their response was cold and distant. We'll file a report, one officer muttered. But unless you catch them in the act, not much we can do. Jasper's frustration boiled over. So that's it? That's justice? The officer gave a tired shrug. Welcome to small-town reality. But Charlotte wasn't done fighting. She hired a local artist to cover the hateful message with something beautiful. A bright mural painted across the door that read, All are welcome here. Some residents disapproved, but others stepped forward. People who had once stayed quiet now joined them, offering help, support, and courage. At the next town hall, Jasper stood again. This time his voice didn't shake. I've been called names, he began, voice trembling but steady. But what's truly wrong is letting fear and anger decide who belongs. I didn't choose how I was born, but every person here can choose to be kind. From the council table, Mason shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, Jasper didn't just see an opponent. He saw a man struggling with his own truth. Later in the quiet parking lot, Mason approached. "You're brave," he said softly. "Braver than I ever was," Jasper frowned. "What do you mean?" Mason hesitated, then sighed. "We all carry things we don't say out loud. Some just hide them better." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Jasper deep in thought. That night, sitting alone in his room, Jasper felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. The battle wasn't over. But the silence had been broken. As the grand opening approached, the bakery became a place of light and movement. Volunteers painted, decorated, and shared laughter. The air buzzed with purpose. Still, Jasper knew the opening wasn't just about bread or coffee. It was about standing tall, together, in the face of fear. The morning arrived bright and clear. A small stage stood before the bakery, colorful banners fluttering in the breeze. The mural behind it gleamed like sunlight, a promise that no matter what came next, they weren't alone anymore. A crowd began to gather, some curious, some supportive, and a few clearly uneasy. Backstage, Jasper's hands trembled. Charlotte rested a steady hand on his shoulder. "You're ready," she said quietly. "Just speak your truth. They'll listen." He nodded, peeking through the curtain. Familiar faces, strangers, supporters holding banners of hope, and at the edge, a few holding signs of protest. Among them stood Mason, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Charlotte stepped up first. Her voice carried confidence and calm. "This town needs to grow," she said. "Change isn't easy, but it starts with courage and with moments like this." Then she smiled and turned toward Jasper. "Please welcome Jasper." Applause rippled through the air as Jasper stepped forward. "My name is Jasper," he began, voice unsteady but growing stronger with each word. "Not long ago I was told I didn't belong. For a while I believed it. But I've learned something important. I was never the problem. The problem was fear." He scanned the crowd and saw his mother, Linda, near the back. Her eyes shimmered. Whether from pride or regret, he couldn't tell. "I'm not here to change who I am," Jasper continued. "I'm here to tell every young person who's ever felt unwanted, you matter. You belong. You have the right to stand tall and be proud of who you are." The crowd fell silent until a voice cut through. "What about tradition?" Mason called out, his tone sharp but not cruel. Jasper met his gaze. "Tradition matters," he said, "but not when it becomes a reason to turn away from kindness. If your values cause pain, maybe it's time to look at them again." Before Mason could answer, another voice trembled from the back, Linda's. "He's right," she said, stepping forward. "I stayed silent for too long. I lost someone I loved because of fear. And I almost lost my son, too, no more. I support him, and I'm proud." Her words rippled through the crowd like a wave. Some nodded. Others looked away, uncertain. Then the shouting began. A small group pushing forward, their voices rising in anger. Jasper's pulse raced. But before they could reach the stage, Charlotte and several others stepped between them, forming a human wall. "You'll have to go through us first," Charlotte said firmly. The air was thick with tension, until Mason lifted a hand. "Enough," he said, his voice heavy. "This isn't the way." The crowd stilled. The protesters backed away. Mason turned to Jasper. "You've made your point," he said quietly. "Let's see if you can live up to it." Then he walked away, leaving a hush behind him. Cheers erupted from the supporters. Jasper returned to the microphone, voice steady now. "This is what change looks like. Messy, uncomfortable, but real. And it starts with all of us." The applause was thunderous. Tears filled his eyes. Later, under the glow of the bakery lights, Charlotte and Isabella stood beside him. "You did good, kid," Charlotte said, smiling. "Really good." Jasper looked up at the stars. "This isn't just for me," he said softly. "It's for anyone who's ever felt small or unseen. We're just getting started." The grand opening had been a turning point, but not the end. The center was full of life, yet challenges still lingered. A week later, Jasper was cleaning up late when his mother appeared in the doorway, nervous but hopeful. "Hi, Jasper," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" Jasper hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Yeah, Mom, let's talk." Her silence had wounded him deeply, but he nodded. They sat across from each other, the air thick with emotion. "I owe you an apology," Isabella began softly. Her eyes shimmered. "I was wrong. I let fear guide me, just like your father did. But watching you speak at the opening, you were so brave. It made me realize I've been hiding for too long." Jasper looked away. "Why now?" he asked quietly. "Why not when I needed you most?" Tears slipped down her cheeks as she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn letter. "It's from my brother Michael," she said. "Before he passed, he wrote this. I ignored it, just like I ignored his pain. And yours," Jasper unfolded the letter. The ink was faded, but the message was clear. "I hope one day you'll find the strength to stand up for what's right." His throat tightened. He looked up, feeling the weight of years between them. The past was painful, but maybe it could also open the door to something new. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Isabella said, voice trembling. "But I want you to know I'm here now. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Jasper was silent for a long time, his heart torn between hurt and hope. "I'm not ready to forgive you," he said finally, "but I appreciate that you're trying. Maybe, with time." Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't the ending she'd wished for, but it was a beginning. A few days later, Jasper got another unexpected visitor, his father, James. He stood at the door, uneasy, hands buried in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice rough but sincere. Reluctantly, Jasper stepped outside. "I don't even know where to start," James admitted. "I've made mistakes more than I can count. I pushed you away because I was scared. Scared of what people might say. Scared of facing parts of myself I never understood. But when I saw you up there that day, I saw more courage in you than I've ever had." Jasper's chest tightened. "You threw me out," he whispered. "Do you have any idea what that did to me?" James's eyes filled. "I can't undo it," he said. "But I want to try to make things right if you'll let me." Jasper thought about walking away, but he remembered Charlotte's words. "Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you." Taking a deep breath, he said quietly, "It'll take time. But maybe we can start with a conversation." Months passed. Jasper began the long process of healing. Isabella volunteered at the community center. James started showing up, really showing up for the first time. The bakery and the new community hub became symbols of kindness, hope, and change. Jasper often stood by the window watching people laugh, talk, and grow together. The boy who once sat alone in the rain was now surrounded by family, both chosen and biological, who believed in him. One evening after closing, Charlotte joined him on the steps. "You did it," she said, smiling. "You changed this town." Jasper shook his head gently. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "I had you," Charlotte chuckled, nudging his shoulder. "Maybe so, but you were the one brave enough to take the first step." Jasper looked up at the night sky. "If there's one thing I've learned," he said softly, "it's that the hardest battles are always worth fighting. And no matter how dark it gets, there's always a light waiting at the end."